from Central Washington's news leader, with Heidi Tauber and Bryan Davis Sports. This is KIMA NewsBeat at 11.
Good evening and thanks for joining us this Thursday night. Led by Washington Congressman Mike Lowry, more than 100 Democrats announced plans today to sue the president to force him to invoke the War Powers Act. Critics of U.S. involvement in the Persian Gulf say the territory is too dangerous, and Congress must have a say in deployment in U.S. troops. Todd Smith has more on the action from Washington, D.C.
With the accidental deaths of 37 sailors aboard the USS Stark, the threat to life aboard the tanker Bridgeton when it hit a mine, the threat mines now pose to U.S. Navy escorts, and intensified attack threats coming from Iran, many on Capitol Hill believe the president should invoke the War Powers Act because the U.S. is at the brink of getting involved in an undeclared war.
Since the administration won't do it, we have little choice but to go to the courts and see that the law is complied with.
The suit against the president was filed in U.S. Federal District Court in Washington by Congressman Mike Lowry on behalf of 107 House and Senate Democrats.
That when American armed forces are put into a condition of imminent hostilities, the president must submit to Congress within 48 hours of that time a report detailing the circumstances involved in that. And then Congress, under the law, has 60 days by which to act on that.
It's another Vietnam Brock Adams is trying to avoid.
We need to have the American people, the Congress of the United States, and the administration all together in one policy for a long-term commitment in the Gulf.
How many young men have to die? How many have to die before he will come to the United States Congress and fully consult with us?
With no guarantees a final court ruling will be favorable, it is a long legal battle that these members of Congress now face. With a first ruling and subsequent appeals, perhaps as far as the U.S. Supreme Court, Lowry says it will be late fall or early winter before he or any of the other members of Congress know whether their lawsuit, which is the largest suit Congress has ever filed against the president, is successful.
Meanwhile, one of the ships that caused so much concern was open to the media today. The gangplanks to the USS Stark were open to the press for the first time since the ship was hit by an Iraqi missile in May. The areas destroyed or damaged by the exploding missiles were cleaned of debris in advance of today's tour, but the blackened walls stood exposed, and wires hanging down into the open spaces were still plainly visible. Some bulkheads had already been replaced before today's tour. Some holes created by shrapnel were covered over with aluminum patches. The stricken frigate was the computer center of the U.S. ship. 37 soldiers died in the attacks, which is believed to have been an accident. The Boeing company got sympathy but little else from Governor Booth Gardner and legislative leaders today in response to the company's request for emergency anti-takeover legislation. Boeing is asking lawmakers to impose a 5-year freeze on the sale of assets or other transactions by a corporate raider. Texas oil man T. Boone Pickens intends to buy up to 15% of the company's stock. Today in Seattle, Gardner and state lawmakers stopped just short of predicting passage of a Boeing bill during the one-day special session planned for Monday. 7 committees from the House and Senate will hold a special hearing on the issue tomorrow in Olympia. 24 protesters were arrested and hauled away from 2 separate protests at the Hanford nuclear reservation today. Although the demonstrations were well publicized in advance, one group splintered off in the middle of the night and nearly made it to a high-security area of the reservation. NewsBeat's Greg Hirakawa has more on the annual event to mark the bombing of Hiroshima.
Energy Department officials say it came as no surprise to them when about 60 protesters commandeered the lobby of the federal building early this morning. The group sang the usual songs of peace and harmony while blocking the building's main entrance. At least one worker trying to get to his office was visibly annoyed.
I just don't think they should let them in here, carting them off one by one. They should have just, herd them up, moved them all out. It's kind of ridiculous.
But the 20-minute sit-in remembering the bombing of Hiroshima had an unusual twist this year. An apparent federal worker approached one of the protesters apparently lending a sympathetic ear. It was enough to move Ruth Mandelbaum to tears.
She was trying to talk me out, but I could tell that she was beginning to break down and that she was giving in and that she really wanted to support us.
She's working here in the building?
Yes, she does. She's a DOE worker.
14 protesters were eventually arrested here, but a splinter group of 10 more had been arrested earlier in the day on the reservation itself. And officials admit they were taken by surprise by this splinter group, as without warning they climbed over fences presumably at around 4 in the morning, making it all the way to the sensitive 200 West area before being captured 2 hours later. According to a DOE official, the arrests occurred without incident. The matter is now in the hands of the FBI. For peace marchers, fruits for their efforts may soon be realized. Only a year ago, Hanford was one of 3 finalists for the nation's first nuclear waste repository. Now that's in doubt. Likewise is the future of Hanford's controversial N reactor, the brunt of today's protest. Still, protesters say the government's actions have not been enough.
The problem is that what's being talked about now is a new production reactor that may go to the Savannah River facility. We don't want a new production reactor. We don't want another area of the country to be poisoned.
Protesters say the wheels putting a possible end to plutonium production at Hanford are moving too slowly. But they admit now they are at least moving. In Richland, I'm Greg Hirakawa for NewsBeat.
And tonight, the Benton County Sheriff's Office says at least 8 of the protesters who refused to give their names are being detained in the county jail in Kennewick. 6 others pleaded guilty to a charge of criminal trespass and were sentenced to 1 day in jail and fined $25 each. Former Ghost Riders Motorcycle Club National President Alvin Heggie was returned to Spokane under heavy guard today in preparation for his trial in the shooting death of Spokane Police Detective Brian Orchard. The 46-year-old Heggie has been in a Wisconsin prison serving a life sentence for murder, arson, and insurance fraud. Heggie is scheduled to appear before Spokane County District Court Judge Daniel Moggs at 1 o'clock tomorrow. He will also be asked whether he has an attorney or if he needs one to be appointed. An 18-year-old Yakima man pleaded guilty to vehicular homicide today, and he'll spend 2 months in jail. Officials say the normal sentence for vehicular homicide is 15 to 20 months. The accident happened in early July on State Route 12 near the Nelson Bridges east of Glebe. Joaquin Davila was accused of driving with disregard for the safety of others when his car crossed the center line and struck another car head-on. The driver of that car, 82-year-old Robert Caillou of Natchez, died. Davila's attorney says in the portion of the law Davila was charged with, the state must prove more than just negligence to win the case. The lawyer says because of the facts of the case, that might have been difficult to do. And he went on to say that if the case went to court, there was a good chance Davila would have been convicted. What began as a murder investigation in Marlin, Texas, has become a search for more than 50 boys who may have had sexual contact with a man who has tested positive for AIDS. Officials have begun contacting dozens of parents of children in Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mexico whose names were on the man's computer. Suspected child molester 38-year-old Jimmy Etheridge was shot to death June 29th by a 16-year-old live-in companion. Holly Stalaji has more on that story.
38-year-old Jimmy Etheridge lived in Marlin for a year and a half until his life was ended June 29th by a 16-year-old youth who shot him in the head. As police began to investigate the case, information began to unravel. Blood analysis released with autopsy results indicate Etheridge had been exposed to the AIDS virus. And books, magazines, and photographs found in his home proved Etheridge was a pedophile, a person who liked sexual contact with children. Although Etheridge did not have the actual AIDS virus, he had been exposed to it. And Falls County authorities are concerned with how many youngsters he, in return, may have also exposed to the deadly disease.
I think it's far too early to say that, but I do feel very strongly that we should look at this as an opportunity to educate our youth and parents and teachers, and just before it gets any further.
Police say it's difficult getting information from children, although Etheridge left some tracks uncovered.
Mr. Etheridge kept very accurate records of who he associated with he also put down the date and where he met the people.
Meanwhile, the teenager who was arrested for shooting Jimmy Etheridge has had murder charges dropped against him by District Attorney Thomas Sehan for lack of evidence.
And a hospital that may have been able to treat any of the boys who may test positive for that disease must close its doors. The nation's first facility devoted to exclusive treatment of AIDS patients is closing because of heavy financial losses. Houston's Institute for Immunological Disorders plans to phase out all programs and services within a year. Officials say the hospital has lost more than $8 million since it opened last September, reportedly due in part to treating patients without health insurance. The facility is also on the forefront of research into that disease and will continue its work for the next 12 months with a $5.8 million federal research grant. In sports tonight, Bryan Davis, a wild one in the Kingdome. The Mariners go nuts and pull it off a win.
They really did go crazy. They got a lot of runs, but early on there was a little bit of worry because a very unusual thing happened early in the game. Could have cost them later on. We'll show you what happened at the Kingdome tonight. Plus, we'll take a look at the rest of the sports. Stay with us.
Exciting. Car deals have been popping up all around town. That includes Chevrolet, especially Chevrolet. Right now, they're offering 3.9% financing or up to $1,000 cash back on S10 pickups, Blazers, even Camaros. I love this. Or get 3.9% financing or $500 cash back on the Corsica, Beretta, Celebrity, Cordy Nova, imported Spectrum. So see your Chevrolet dealer and get 3.9% financing or cash back. See you at the beach.
The Honda Accord, the Honda Civic, the Honda Prelude, and now the 5-speed mid-engine overhead valve Honda riding mower. It transforms cutting the grass into a memorable Sunday drive. The Honda riding mower. It could be the car of the year.
Right now, get 0% first-year financing at Smitty Small Engine, Yakima, and Sunnyside Honda. Summers never seem to last long enough. Relive your special times this summer, forever, with quality color prints from Photo House. They have exactly what you want. Quality and a full range of sizes. Standard 3x5s, Maxi 4x6s, and Super 5x7. All at the same low price. Drop your film off today at any of the 7 convenient locations, from Ellensburg to Sunnyside. For quality and selection, choose same-day processing at Photo House.
Well, the Mariners are glad to be back home at the Dome tonight, starting off a 4-game weekend set against the California Angels, and it was a wild one. Let's take a look at the highlights from the Kingdome. Mariners score. Willie Frazier's wild pitch gets Johnny Moses home. It was 1-0 in the third. Then a crazy play. Ken Phelps with 2 aboard hits an absolute moonshot for a 3-run home run, right? Wrong. Let's take one more look at it, and we will tell you why. Here's a slow-motion look. The ball hits a speaker way on the top of the... Here's a slow-motion look. The ball hits a speaker way on the top of the Kingdome roof. It was in play. The speaker was not outside of the fence, and that means the ball is still in play. It bounced foul. It stays foul. He later was out. Bob Boone then singles in Doug DeSensei, who comes scheming home from second to throw just a little bit late. Game was tied 1-1. The Angels led 2-1 after the inning. Then the bottom of the third with the Angels leading 3-2. Mariners have 1 on base, 2 out. Jim Presley just does get that one over the wall. It was 4-3 in favor of the Mariners. Bottom of the fifth with the M's on top, 5-3. Phelps gets a double into left center field, 2-run score. They lead 7-3. They add 5 more in the 6th inning. They go on for a 15-4 win. Moving down the scoreboard, Minnesota moves back a game ahead of Oakland in the AL West. Milwaukee over Baltimore. Cleveland rips Toronto 14-5. Detroit over the Yanks 12-5. In the National League, San Diego beats Atlanta. Mets slip past the Cubs. St. Louis 5-2 winners, and Montreal beats Pittsburgh 6-3. Well, veteran golfer Bobby Watkins, who has never claimed a victory on the Pro Golfers Tour, has the lead after 1 round of play at the PGA Championship in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. Now, one of the few people who liked the weather today was the Pelican, but Watkins didn't find it too bad himself. This is a nice shot right here. Now, he winds up with 6 birdies on the day, moving to the leaderboard. You can see he is at -4, 68, but he is closely shadowed by David Edwards and Fred Funk. 6 other golfers are tied at -2. Well, one of the bright spots for the Seahawks at yesterday's scrimmage with the Houston Oilers was the emergence of rookie quarterback Sammy Garza, who threw for both of the Seahawks' touchdowns against the Oiler defense. Ron Callen reports on the Hawks' 5th-round draft pick from Texas El Paso.
The number 5 on his back is fitting. Sammy Garza is the Seahawks' 5th-string quarterback. His chances of making the final 45-man roster are in the category called long shot. But that doesn't bother the rookie from Texas El Paso. Yesterday, he threw a couple of touchdown passes in the scrimmage against Houston.
Well, I was pretty fired up, I guess. I was trying not to be overexcited. I just wanted to, you know, just go out there and do my job. I didn't want to forget my assignments. That was, first of all, I didn't want to go out there and get blanked and, you know, and go crazy and just throw the ball all over the place. So that was the first thing I wanted to do, just go out there and be calm, be poised, and just get my assignments.
Garza, of course, is looking up at some formidable competition to make the Seahawk roster. But performances like the one he had yesterday can only help.
For me, that's my first step, and you know, and right now I need to prove, you know, to, you know, all the coaches and everybody like that, you know, I can play, and so I guess that's, like I said, it's a big step forward, and hopefully it will continue.
If Garza can continue to impress the Seahawk coaches, he may get another chance to show what he can do in the preseason opener next week against the Los Angeles Rams.
And the Seahawks announced today that veteran nose tackle Reggie Kinlaw is hanging it up after 8 seasons in the NFL. He played 6 of those years with the Raiders before the Seahawks claimed him on waivers in 1985. And veteran offensive tackle Ron Essink walked out of camp today. Essink, a 10th-round draft pick in 1980, has played in 83 games for the Hawks, but he was coming back this year from elbow surgery that caused him to miss all of last season. He was also struggling with a groin muscle injury. Team president Mike McCormick said that Essink had just been feeling down in the dumps lately, and I saw an interview with him the other day. You know, he sounded pretty enthusiastic about coming back, but sometimes the mind is willing, but the body doesn't cooperate. It seems like that might be sort of the problems he's having.
Especially in football. So young, their body isn't very willing.
Yeah, but in football terms, though, you age rather quickly.
That's
though,
right.
You really do.
All right, Brian, thanks a lot. Coming up here later on NewsBeat, a local chemist has been told to clean up his act, and salvagers looking for treasures off the Puget Sound will probably find something this weekend.
I don't mind working hard, but I'll tell you how I feel. I work an honest day, and I want an honest deal.
Start your day out right with a tall glass of orange juice, and Safeway has just the thing, famous Citrus Hill frozen orange juice. The 12-ounce cans are super savers at just 99 cents each. Angel Soft Bath Tissue is also on sale. The package of 4 rolls at just 89 cents. Safeway, where you get an honest deal every day.
Weimart members, look in your newspaper for your big, colorful 8-page membership bulletin. There's a full page of back-to-school items for fall, like K&M ring binders. Buy 1 binder for just $1.89 and receive a 200-count package of filler paper free. And Elmer's Glue All or School Glue, 4-ounce size, 2 for just 99 cents. And Pen Tab writing tablets or envelopes, assorted sizes, 2 for just 89 cents. Stock up for school. Paper products on sale now at Weimart.
When it comes to spas, is someone trying to pull the wool over your eyes? At Spas and Saunas of Yakima, this won't happen because they carry the real one, the only one, Jacuzzi Whirlpool. This weekend, save thousands on jacuzzi spas like the Esprit for only $18.95 during their huge truckload sale. These very low sale prices are limited to the truckload inventory only. Don't miss this opportunity. Go down to Spas and Saunas of Yakima and check out the exceptional buy on the Jacuzzi Esprit at $18.95, plus other fantastic buys this weekend at Spas and Saunas of Yakima.
A Yakima chemist today denied he's maintaining toxic chemicals dangerous to the public in a North First Avenue warehouse. Jay Woods has been told by the Department of Ecology to clean up the old warehouse dehydrated foods plant. The DOE says the warehouse is full of dangerous chemicals and that some of them are in leaky containers. But Woods says only some fertilizer and copper dust bags are leaking, adding that if the DOE will show him the leaking chemicals, he'll take care of the problem. Wood says he has been in the process of moving his laboratory supplies and equipment to a site north of the terror site landfill, but he's not sure he can move the rest of it because the DOE has labeled it hazardous waste. The number of domestic violence cases is on the rise in Yakima County, and officials say that's due to a new state law which requires officers to arrest the person responsible in such incidents. As NewsBeat's Kathy Comedja reports, the law has placed a heavy workload on police and related services.
Yakima police officer Chuck Stacy has served on the force for 19 years. He says the difference in the number of domestic violence calls this year is quite noticeable, about 1 or 2 a night.
They tend to tie us up for 45 minutes to an hour. We have to take someone into custody if there is violence involved in the situation.
And fill out the paperwork as well as transport the suspects to jail. Between January and June of 1987, 476 domestic violence calls were reported by YPD, with more than 200 contact orders served. But those figures don't include calls where no evidence of violence was found. Captain Tony Wentz agrees the caseloads create a substantial burden on the patrol officer's time. But it's the law.
You're committed to do that. We have no alternatives. And so if we do have a case where it takes some searching to find somebody involved in a domestic violence incident and arrest that person, then we're tied up for that length of time.
The growing complaints of time and manpower devoted to domestic violence cases isn't limited to the police department. After a report has been filed, it is then directed here to the prosecuting attorney's office.
I'm spending most of my time on the domestic violence cases, and it does affect my caseload up here with respect to other cases and how much time I'm able to devote to the other cases.
A sentiment Captain Wentz echoes, referring to the long-term impact of mandated legislation as an end to police performing traditional services.
Why aren't you in my neighborhood? Why don't we see a police car? Well, the reason they don't is because they're busy answering calls and we don't have time to patrol.
Kathy Comedja reporting for NewsBeat.
A group of hard-working volunteers has begun the long process of converting the old Hunsinger warehouse into the new Union Gospel Mission. While the official plans have yet to be completed, workmen are already painting and installing new windows. Union Gospel Executive Director Roger Phillips says the current focus is on the front part of the building. He predicts they'll be able to move into that section within a year. The entire project isn't expected to be finished until 1989, and the new building will double the capacity of the current mission and provide housing services for families as well as single homeless people.
We have to redo the whole thing, be real honest, and we're having to refurbish the whole building, trying to draw plans that'll work in warehouse type of situations, and it's going to be beautiful, but to people who do not know anything about construction, they walk in and they say, oh, how will you ever do anything with an old warehouse like this?
Phillips also says he's received about $200,000 so far toward the $1 million project. Nearly 3 years ago, 2 Sunnyside hospitals became one after administrators decided the local economy couldn't support both institutions. And since the two merged, the reorganized Sunnyside Community Hospital has become so efficient and so busy that an expansion project is planned. NewsBeat's Colleen Bagnell has the details.
It was only a few years ago that Sunnyside Valley